Howdy, hey everyone! Welcome back to the Celtia region, my Pokémon region based on Germany, and starting with Sun and Moon, every new region has had a fan-favorite addition, regional variants. These are a great way to bring back old Pokémon into the spotlight with new types, abilities, movesets, and designs, all while being based on the same old Pokémon. This is going to be my second batch of regional forms, because I actually made a video about the first bit of regional forms. You can go check that out later, but right now, we're talking about these ones. So, the first one I'm doing is the Beartic line. Cubchoo and Beartic, being not super good Gen 5 Pokemon, are, unfortunately, kind of forgettable. They aren't as creative as some other Pokemon here, but I'm here to change that. So, it's a bit difficult trying to understand what you want to do for the regional forms, because you have to keep enough the same to the point where you know what Pokemon it's based on, but you have to change enough to, constitute it being different. Now, the original, like I said in Sun and Moon, when they were introduced, they, hardly changed at all. It's like, whoa, this Vulpix is white, or whoa, this Diglett has hair, 3 total hairs. But yeah. The color I decided here, I thought it was beach themed, because it's gonna be a water type. Spoiler alert. But I don't like it, so I'm gonna end up changing it in the final design. Say hello to Celtian Cubchoo, an ice and water type. This form of Cubchoo came to be when Cubchoo were imported from Unova. They adapted to the warmer weather by growing neck fur that allowed them to sweat more. So it might just look like the fluffy collar is there just for fluffy's sake, but in reality it actually resembles the segments on a tardigrade. That also explains the brown color, since tardigrades are usually brown. But I guess they could also just be the color of grizzlies. It's not on the original, is now orbiting Cubchoo as if it were electrons on an atom. But water bears, atoms, what's with all the microscopic stuff? Well, that's because the microscope was a Dutch invention, being created by Zacharias Hansen, I can't pronounce that very well, in the year 1590. And with tardigrades, or water bears, being able to survive extreme cold, and Cubchoo being a polar bear, all fits. Now, since we did Cubchoo, it only makes sense to do Beartic next. No point in stalling, so let's hop in. So, Beartic, actually, funnily enough, it actually has a bit less detail as compared to ordinary Cubchoo, because it's mostly just all white. So that leaves a lot of room for improvement, but the only real thing I've changed is, of course, the water, the colors, and the big fluffy chest fur. Fluffy chest fur, it's always fun, like I said, fluffy for fluffy's sake, but also resembles a tardigrade. But yeah. The colors are going to match the pre-evolutions, as they should. The water's a little bit transparent to give that, watery feeling to it. But yeah. Say hello to Celtian Beartic, an ice and water type. The droplets of water surrounding it detect even the slightest of movements in the air, notifying it of prey nearby. Its chest fur keeps its organs warm. Beartic follows much of the same design traits as Cubchoo: brown body, fluffy neck fur, water drops orbiting the head, but since the original Beartic's pinhead is meant to resemble the top of a mountain, I think, the water drops look like clouds circling the peak, kind of like what Dynamaxing did. The limbs are also a bit chonkier because tardigrades are indeed chonky boys. One thing I do regret though is taking away his beautiful beard. At least he has a lot of chest hair now. On the topic of Gen 5, another less but still kind of forgettable Gen 5 line is the Chandelure line, which is a shame because it's one of my favorite Pokemon, along with Funny Tree Man and Go-Go Power Rangers. Either way, let's hop into Litwick. Now, this one is actually going to change the least out of all the Pokemon in this video. I mean, the whole thing it's literally... I'm gonna, of course, explain it later, but its whole thing is, it's taller, its hair wax is different, and the fire is a different color. That's it. Of course, it's gonna change more as it evolves, but Litwick itself doesn't. It's not that much. I mean, the hair is less spooky. The flame is gonna be different. It's not gonna be the same as the shiny, where it's just blue. But yeah. So you can see I'm adding the color now. It's yellow. But yeah, I mean, the whole thing is it's just overall friendly. Now, if you pay close attention, I swapped the eyes and the flame color of the original. Thought that was kind of clever. No? Okay. Here's Celtian Litwick, a pure fire type. This form of Litwick came to be when people began feeding the local Litwick, getting rid of the need to absorb souls to survive. So, first things first, the design. It's not short and stubby anymore, resembling those really tall candles you see at feasts and celebrations. This ties back to its Pokédex entry, saying that it's super, well, not super pampered, but like, it's fed more. The hair waxing, like I said in the design process thing, isn't as creepy anymore. Instead, it just looks like just some hair. Next up, Lampent. Like Litwick, I wanted Lampent to keep the celebration theme, just make it a little bit different. You'll see in a minute. So for Lampent, it's actually going to change quite a bit. As you can see right now, the biggest change is no more hats. I always thought that the hat just kind of made it like creepier, like, oh, it's standing there just, whoa, oh. Or I guess, like, I don't know, maybe my thought process was like, oh, if he doesn't have a hat, he has nothing to hide, so he's not creepy anymore. I don't know. Anyways, yeah, it's not a pure fire type anymore. Instead, I decided it's going to be a fire ice type. We only have one of those, and it's pretty rare in Galarian Darmanitan. And, so, yeah, I just thought, you know what, why not? Fun way to introduce a new, type combo. Well, not new, but, like, new-ish. You know what I mean. Say hello to Celtian Lampent, a fire and ice type. This Pokemon helps lost travelers through the mountains and forests. You can't tell if it's hot or cold by simply touching it. So, Lampent also has a few inspirations. Firstly, the key ring piece in front of it, as well as the lack of a hat thing, makes it look like those candle holders you see around Christmas time. And the position of the arms make it look like those handheld lamps, as well as a Christmas wreath. And finally, it's time for Chandelure. You might have noticed that by now this line has a Christmas thing going on. Don't worry, it only increases from here. So, Chandelure is going to, of course, change a lot. A difference right off the bat is that, it's the flame things aren't connected to its arms anymore. They're like their own individual arms instead. And there's only 2 of them. But, that'll make sense in a while. The eyes are more diamond-shaped instead of, the circles of the original Chandelure. Sorry, don't know why that, like, I couldn't think of what a circle was called. Anyways, but yeah, I did that to make it look more like, like ice crystals. So, yeah. Say hello to Celtian Chandelure, a fire and ice type. These Pokemon are popular around wintertime as a way to keep houses warm and jolly. Curiously, their flames are cold to the touch, but still produce heat. As mentioned earlier, this whole line is centered around Christmas. Litwick is a Christmas candle, Lampent is a wreath, and Chandelure is a full-blown Christmas tree. Now you might be wondering if the whole thing is being nice to people for the holidays. Fairy type would seem more fitting. Well, that would actually mean that Celtia would have 4 fairy-type regional forms, and that seems like a bit much. And since Christmas is in the winter, both here in the States and in Germany, ice-type it is. But then, why all the Christmas stuff? Well, the idea of Christmas tree was started in Germany. Back then, candles were put on the trees, but this was stopped when the trees would burn down. Many people use electric lights now instead. Chandelure flips the idea on its head. Fake lights, real tree. Real lights, fake tree. And the cherry on top, or rather the star on top, is the star. Chandelure's head now looks like a Christmas star on top of the Christmas tree. I also curved the flame hands a bit to look a bit more like more ornaments, you know, traditional Christmas tree decorations. Now, skipping ahead a few generations is the final line for today, the Impidimp line. Unlike the last two lines, this line isn't really forgotten, but instead simply has a lot of regional form potential. Now, Impidimp is he's a funny little guy. I've always liked him. He's so silly. He has a lot of personality, like little gremlin, little goblin. This one I have a bit trouble with the proportions and the eyes. Normally I don't have too much trouble with that, but this one, like, the eyes are so round that, like, if I don't make them round enough or big enough or too small or whatnot, they don't look right. So in the final design, they don't really look right. Oh well. The line work is pretty rough around the edges in some places. Don't take this as me not liking the design. I think it's actually a pretty nice design. It's just a little different, that's all. I'm giving it colors of a statue for reasons you'll see in a minute. And then adding some shading, it's, yeah, nothing much to say here. Anyways, say hello to Celtian Impidimp, a pure fairy type. All forms of Impidimp have evolved from this one. They seek out houses of the people they like to leave gifts while they sleep. It's based on these little baby angel statues you see in people's yards sometimes. Instead of the little gremlins that are Galarian Impidimp, Celtian Impidimp is quite literally a little angel, breaking into your house to leave gifts, reminiscent of mythical brownies, a kind of hobgoblin that would either live in or sneak into your house to do chores. And since the fairy type is also the light type, the pattern on its face is reminiscent of a rising sun. Next up, Morgrem. These middle stages are always a bit hard, but this one particularly. I mean, I have an idea for Grimmsnarl and Impidimp, so this is just finding a middle ground. So there's one thing that I like to keep consistent throughout all of my designs, and that is consistency, especially with the colors. Usually, I like to keep the colors similar to the original. Like the, well, not the original, but like the pre-evolution. Like, for example, like sometimes you can add colors. Yeah, that makes more sense. You can make the design more complicated. But usually I don't like to take a color from the pre-evolution and just throw it out the window. But this one is the complete opposite of that. I mean, it does gain a new type, which makes sense for it, but, yeah, as you can see, the Celtian Impidimp, his hair was yellow, but this one's hair is like a, I don't know, like a lime green, I think? Lime yellow? Yeah, I don't know. But yeah, as you can probably tell, it's literally playing into a pun of, like, bushy hair. Silly. Shut up. Now say hello to Celtian Morgrem, a fairy and grass type. These Pokemon don't move much, but rather tend to the wildlife around their homes. The mushrooms on their body are incredibly sweet. So Morgrem here is becoming another lawn decoration, similar to the baby cupids, garden gnomes. Gnomes are usually depicted as plant spirits, warding off plagues and using their magic to grow quality crops, so grass type makes sense. All of this gnome imagery is shown in Morgrem with the tree-like halberd hair, looking more like the pointy hats gnomes are usually seen wearing, as well as having a beard. Something that Morgrem usually doesn't have in the original. And as a final nail in the coffin, the pattern on its stomach looks like a belt buckle. And finally, Grimmsnarl. Praised for being a fairy type that isn't cute, feminine, and/or food, as well as being pretty not terrible and competitive. So what would a regional Grimmsnarl look like? Okay, this design is by far the most complicated. You can tell that it's sped up by like a lot compared to the rest of it. Because this design actually took around like 2 times longer. Because the line work is just like really complicated, and because there's a lot of complicated line work, that means there's a lot of complicated shading, blah blah blah. But the feeling I really wanted to exemplify, excuse my big grammar, is the fact that it sits still. It doesn't move. Something that I actually forgot to put in the script is that this line is based on gnomes, because gnomes are like, oh, like whimsical spirits or something like that, and so they're kind of similar to the elves, that like the evil elves that the original Grimmsnarl line is based off of, as well as like witches. So yeah, in fact gnomes are actually pretty like the opposite of witches, but so it might have been good for a convergent form, but it didn't really feel very convergency. Oh well. Say hello to Celtian Grimmsnarl, a fairy and grass type. Sighting this Pokemon moving are very rare. Pokemon often hide inside its hair or nibble on the mushrooms on its back. When they gather, they can raise entire forests. So you know how earlier I was talking about the brownies? Well, there's another thing about them. They're actually offended if you give them gifts for their labors. So, no material possessions, sounds like. Sounds a bit like Buddhism. So, Grimmsnarl is in the pose that Buddha is usually seen in. Also, while the ceramic gnomes were invented in Germany, statues to the Roman god Priapus, probably butchered that pronunciation, were made way back in ancient Rome, explaining the leaf crown. He also has a more curved, plump nose and ears, as well as his hat covering his face looks like those cartoony depictions of gnomes. The mushrooms are also there for a reason. Not only are they associated with the grass type, despite not being plants, but Grimmsnarl is found in the Glimwood Tangle in Galar, a place filled with overgrown mushrooms. But gnomes are also often seen living inside of mushrooms. So, bam! It just all comes together. So that's it for now. What do you think? Sure, my last 2 videos were off topic of the Celtia region, but you can probably expect another Celtia video next. But who knows? Anything can happen. But for now, this is goodbye. See ya, and stay safe.